Let's start with the intensify portion of Rank's model of persuasion. As we said before, there are three major tactics that persuaders can use in order to intensify part of their message. The first of these tactics is repetition. Intensifying by repetition is an easy, simple, and effective way to persuade someone because people are comfortable with the known and the familiar. Our goal, if we are using repetition in a persuasive message, is to imprint on the memory of the receiver so that they can easily identify, recognize, and respond to the message. One example of repetition that I know that you all can relate to is this image on the left, the golden arches. This is the logo for McDonald's, the fast food chain. And immediately when you saw that yellow M, you were able to identify and recognize it as the logo for McDonald's. And maybe you responded to it by suddenly craving chicken McNuggets or by singing the jingle in your head. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it. And so this image is so imprinted on the memory of us, right? On our collective memory, that when we see this image, we immediately know what it's talking about, and that tells you that this repetition really does work. Another tactic that we can use is association. Association happens when we are intensifying by linking an idea or product with something that is already loved or desired by, or hated or feared by, the intended audience. So in this case, we are trying to intensify our audience's thoughts by linking something that they already know about, that they already really like, and telling them that these two things are linked together. And McDonald's is actually a really good example of this as well. You might recall when you were younger that, and I think they still do this, is that McDonald's had Happy Meals, and they include a toy with every meal. Now, McDonald's goal in introducing the toys to the Happy Meal wasn't to give free toys to kids. It was to incentivize kids to buy more Happy Meals. They were linking the idea of the Happy Meal with something that was already loved or desired by their intended audience, children. And that thing that they loved or desired was a toy. I can't tell you how many times I begged my parents to go to McDonald's for Happy Meals so that I could complete my Barbie collection, right? So association really does work as an intensifying tactic. When we link an idea that we're trying to sell to someone with something that they already like or desire, then that can really have a big impact on the intended audience. And this works the other way as well. If we're trying to get somebody to avoid something, if we link it with something that they hate or fear, that will make them avoid that particular idea or product. So association is a really powerful intensifying tool. And these associations can be direct or indirect. So the Happy Meal was a pretty direct association. Buy a Happy Meal, get a toy, be happy. But these associations can be indirect as well through the use of things like metaphoric language, allusions, contexts, things like that. And some good things are often linked with products that are common human needs, wants, or desires. Things like basics, certitude, intimacy, space, growth. All of these are sort of metaphoric ways of associating one thing with another. The final way that a persuader can intensify their message is through the composition of that message. Composition is intensifying by pattern or arrangement. So we're using things like design, variation in sequence and in proportion to add to the force of words, images, and movements. And so as a result, the composition of a message can be verbal or nonverbal. So if we're looking at the verbal composition of a message, we are looking at the choice of words, the level of abstraction in those words, so how concrete or abstract those words are. We're looking at the patterns of the sentences. We're looking at how long the message is. All of that has to do with the verbal composition of the message. The nonverbal composition of the message has to do with things like the visuals represented within the message, so the colors, the shapes, the sizes. It can be associated with the music within that message. It can be having to do with mathematics, the quantities, time and space. There's a lot that goes into the nonverbal composition of a message. And when I think of the nonverbal composition of a message, I actually ran across this article recently that talked about how food photographers take pictures of their subjects for advertisements, and it was talking about all the tricks that these photographers use in order to boost the nonverbal composition of their messages. So, for example, one of the images that was included in this article was this image of a stack of delicious looking pancakes with motor oil being poured over them. And this image was one of the tricks that photographers used in order to make food look more appealing. It just so happens that motor oil produces on film better than regular old maple syrup does. And so they tend to use motor oil in the place of maple syrup to make the product look even more delicious. They do a similar thing with whipped cream, right? Rather than using actual whipped cream, which melts really quickly and can look really unappetizing on a dessert, they use shaving cream instead. And they have all sorts of different tricks like that, like putting cardboard in between the pancakes and all sorts of things that you just wouldn't expect. Hairspray on fruit, just to make the nonverbal composition of the message look really good and really appealing to the audience. So these are the three main tactics that somebody can use when they are trying to intensify their message. They can repeat the message over and over again. They can try to associate their idea or product with something that is already liked by their audience. And they can compose their message in such a way that it is super appealing to their audience.